Okay, everybody, I think we'll get started here. My name is Nels Gilbertson-Ertl, and I'm the Content Marketing Manager here at BrandPoint. First of all, thank you so much for hanging out with us this afternoon. We're really happy to have you here. Before I pass it over to Scott, I just have a few housekeeping items. First of all, the webinar is going to run about 40 to 45 minutes. We will have the recording, so don't worry about taking notes while you're watching or listening if you don't want to. Tomorrow we'll send out an email with the link to the webinar recording along with the slides and a couple other related resources. Secondly, everyone on the call is muted, so if at any point during the presentation you want to chew your lunch extra loudly or feel compelled to erupt into wild applause, feel free to do that. And we will be monitoring and answering questions throughout. So if you do have questions, go ahead and use the chat box on your screen or tweet them to us at brandpoint.co or BrandPointCo and use the hashtag Content Marketing Playbook. We'll also have time for Q&A at the end of the webinar, and we'll get to as many questions as we can. So I think that about covers it. So without further ado, I will pass it over to Scott.
Hello, everybody. I'm Scott Severson, the president of BrandPoint, and I just want to thank everybody for taking the time to join us today. Really excited to share some of our ideas that you can put to use for your content marketing program. So before we dig in, I'd like to give you a quick snapshot of what we do here at BrandPoint. We are a full-service content marketing agency, and we help our clients with creating comprehensive content marketing strategies to help guide their marketing efforts and ensure that they're really reaching the right audience with the right message at the right time. In our content development practice, we produce informative articles and powerful visual content and other digital assets that really helps position our clients' brands as a valuable resource for their audience. We also have an unmatched and exclusive content promotion and distribution network that really helps our clients get their content in front of new targeted audiences and help create new audience for them. And we make all of this really simple through our content marketing software platform that keeps everything organized and accessible and gives you great planning and measurement tools. Okay? But enough about us. So I want to start with a quick story. Like a lot of you this past holiday season, my family received an Alexa for a holiday gift, and it immediately became my 5-year-old son's very best friend. He would ask Alexa literally everything. Do you know any fun facts about dinosaurs? Do you know how snow is made? Do you know why my dad doesn't have hair on the top of his head? And the list goes on and on and on. The thing that I thought was really interesting is, to my son, Alexa is as real as you or me. He quickly developed what I think can only be described as a personal relationship with this device. Then, after about 2 weeks, he leveled up and discovered that he could order toys from Alexa. One of the cool things about the platform is you have an app where you get a transcript of everything that you ever ask Alexa. And so the transcript went something like this: Alexa, do you know about Dinobots? Because he's really into Transformers. And Alexa would respond, I found Dinobots Grimlock for $38.95. Would you like me to order it? And Finn would respond an emphatic yes. And then he would say, do you know about Optimus Prime? Why, yes, I found Optimus Prime. Would you like me to order it? Yes. So this went on for 40 minutes, and during that time, my son ordered $840 worth of toys over a 40-minute period. This was not a problem that existed in our household about a month and a half ago. So my point in sharing this story is A, I think it's really funny, and B, more importantly, I think it illustrates how fast our world is changing. It's changing before our very eyes, and I think that's both a challenge and an opportunity for us marketers. So we have to adapt to a rapidly changing world, and at the center of all of it, I think, is content marketing. Now, there are several definitions of content marketing out there, but this one from the Content Marketing Institute is my favorite. Content marketing is a strategic marketing approach focused on creating and distributing valuable, relevant, and consistent content to attract and retain a clearly defined audience and ultimately drive profitable customer action. I think that sums it up really nicely. Now, to me, the key to this definition is the word valuable. Great content provides concrete value to an audience and answers their most important questions. As a marketing practice, content marketing has really exploded over the last several years. By 2019, just a year from now, it is expected to be a $300 billion industry. Now, most of you are planning to invest even more in content marketing this year than you did last year. So you're a part of that growth. Gartner predicts that within 10 years, content marketing will become so infused in every marketing tactic that it will lose its meaning altogether. It's going to both overtake and become marketing. So despite all that growth and adoption, a robust content marketing program can be complicated and difficult to implement. Many marketers dabble in tactics, but in many cases, we find that they lack a framework to operate within that's really going to help them generate ideal results. So during our time together today, what I'd like to share with you is a systematic approach that you can apply to your own content marketing program to help you grow it and get better results, hopefully. So I believe that a great system is a sum of its components. So when I think about a healthy content marketing system, I think about it in terms of its 6 key components. And those are illustrated on the screen. So first, the team. What are the core accountabilities that you need covered on your team? What are the right tools that are really going to help you succeed in your program? What are the right questions to ask your audience to really understand who they are and what they need? How can you simplify your approach to content marketing strategy? What data do you use to measure your impact, and how do you organize it all? And finally, and probably most importantly, how do you create truly great content? So the components of the system that I'm going to outline are really designed to help you create focus and provide a more operational approach to your efforts. As we break this down, I encourage you, either in your head or on your device, think about your current state in each of these areas and rank yourself on a scale from 1 to 10. I think understanding that current state in each of these components can help you understand where you might want to focus. So let's break it down. First, we're going to talk about your marketing team. To be strong in our team function, we really need 2 things. We need the right people in the right roles, and we need all core accountabilities covered. What does that look like? I believe that the people that are actually creating and executing your message are really just as important as the people that you're trying to reach. As we review team structure, I think it's helpful to think about these as core accountabilities, not necessarily individual roles. And what I mean by that is one person may own multiple functions. So like you might have somebody that plays a strategist and a content creator role for you, or depending on what your organization looks like, multiple people might just focus on one function. Like you might have multiple people in a content creation seat. So really your scale, your resources, and your needs are going to dictate the actual number of people that are required for each of these accountabilities, but these are the core things that we want to have covered. It's also important to remember that some of these accountabilities, if they're missing on your existing team, may lend themselves to being outsourced to an agency. So let's look at what these individual accountabilities look like. So first we have the project manager. So if you're in marketing, you know that marketing teams wear a lot of hats and they fulfill a lot of different needs for various departments in your organization. Your project manager will help your marketing team and really the rest of your organization plan out what really needs to get done and create clarity around that. So it's a really important accountability for your team. Next we have the strategist. So we believe that impactful content marketing starts with a good plan and a strong understanding of your audience. Your strategist, they should be the person that has a pulse on all of your content marketing output as well as your business objectives and the needs of your audience and putting that plan together. The content creator. Your content creator is really going to help you develop content assets for multiple audiences, channels, and your various buyer journey stages. Now, beyond being able to create great content, it's really helpful if he or she has at least a working understanding of SEO best practices. Although many organizations do like to keep this function in-house, content creation is prime for outsourcing, whether that's with freelancers or a content marketing agency like BrandPoint. Next we have the SEO and PPC manager. Now, in some organizations this is split into two different roles, but for our purposes we're combining it into one accountability. So here's why this is important. 75% of users don't go past the first search engine results page. So that means if your content isn't showing up on page 1, you functionally don't exist to 75% of your potential audience. So ideally every person on your team has a understanding of basic principles of SEO, but we find that having a dedicated specialist can ensure that really all of your digital assets are optimized for search. The marketing automation manager or your email manager. So full-scale marketing automation and email marketing programs are a key component of most content marketing campaigns, and they're usually enough to keep at least one person in your organization busy. Now, email writing can obviously be a shared function, but these programs benefit greatly from having a dedicated owner. So now that we have our team in place, let's look at some of the tools that can help them be successful. So Any content marketing effort requires at least a few tools to run efficiently. To be strong in this component, we really need two things. We need access to the right tools to help us create efficiency, and we need expertise in using them. If your organization is average, you're currently using 17 different tools. And it doesn't take long when you start counting up all of the different pieces of software that you interface with on a daily basis to do your job. The challenge is not access to tools, but finding the right tools that are going to meet your needs. Well, it turns out that you have a lot of tools to choose from. This is what the marketing technology tool landscape looks like today. And there will be extra points if you can find BrandPoint on this list. We are on there. But this is an area that has exploded. If we think back to 2011, just 7 short years ago, there were only 150 software tools available to marketers. That was maybe enough, but now we have over 5,000. I think that's a lot of complexity when I look at this chart of tools that are available to us. So let's try and simplify by breaking these tools down into the 4 kind of essential tools that you really need to have a strong content marketing practice. So the first is your content management system or your publishing platform. Obviously you need a website. You need a place to host all of your digital content. Everyone is thinking right now, Scott, of course we know that. That's kind of a no-brainer. The reason that I bring this up is one of the core issues that we find in working with our clients is when the website is hosted on a platform that the marketing team cannot easily manipulate. So here's your test. If you have to talk to somebody in your IT department, not to bash IT departments, they're awesome, but if you have to talk to somebody in your IT department to make changes to your website, if you're in marketing, you need to run to a new platform. It's just going to help you be much more efficient and faster, frankly. So next is your customer relationship management software. Although CRM is primarily used by the sales team, we feel that there's some really powerful user insights in your CRM for marketers. A big insight is going to help you understand what types of content are most effective at moving prospects through your funnel. A CRM is also really helpful in creating alignment between sales and marketing teams. And we are seeing more integration and alignment between the sales team and the marketing team than really ever before. Next is your content marketing platform, and these are growing significantly in popularity. So if you have more than one person on your team that is involved in the production and reviewing and approval of content, a content marketing platform is really going to be your best friend in 2018. A CMP really helps simplify your entire content creation process, and it gives you one central location to collaborate with your team, plan your editorial calendar, and publish from. So if anybody thinks this isn't an essential tool, consider this. According to Gleanster Research, companies that don't invest in some sort of content marketing workflow software, they spend $120,000 more per year to produce the same amount of content as companies who use a CMP. So it's worth looking into. Next is your social media management. So if social media plays a role in your content marketing strategy, which it does for the majority of us, a social media management tool is extremely helpful. It gives you a place to both create and publish your social content, and it's going to help you track your KPIs like engagement and traffic referrals, and give you a place to listen to what your audience is really saying about your brand. Finally, we have your marketing automation or email platform. And some people just use email. Others use marketing automation that incorporates email as a core function. But we really feel like marketing automation can help deliver on content marketing's core promise. And that is providing value and relevance to your audience through content, and then nurturing them along their journey to becoming your customer. Now, marketing automation can get a little complex, so the right tool is really worth the investment, and there's a bunch of them out there. So when it comes to marketing software tools, more isn't always better, and it can even create complexity. So when you're considering adding new marketing tech, keep in mind the resources that it takes to use each tool effectively and how each tool really serves both your core business and your marketing goals. So now we get to one of the most critical and I think most misunderstood aspects of content marketing, your audience. So I think this Ann Handley quote is a great mindset to have when we are thinking about our audience. Will our audience thank us for the content that we're creating? Will they thank us for it? Is it valuable to them? So to be strong in our audience component, we really need two things. We need to intimately understand who our audience is, and we need to know what their buyer's journey looks like and what content they need at each stage of their journey. At the very core of content marketing and what sets it apart from other marketing philosophies is the intense focus on providing value to the people that your organization serves. It's one of the things that I truly love about this space that we operate in. When I think about who's great at serving their audience, I think of a brand like REI. They were actually voted Content Marketer of the Year in 2017 by the Content Marketing Institute. So personally, whether it's hunting or camping, I spend a lot of my personal free time throughout the year in the outdoors. I love REI's content. Their videos, their blogs, their in-store events are all focused on helping me get the most of my time outside. They're giving me camp cooking tips or teaching me how to triangulate my position using a map and compass. If any of you want to learn that, just email me after this and I'll tell you. Now, while the subject matter is obviously completely different than what we do at BrandPoint for our own content marketing, I use REI as a touchstone. I often ask myself if my content that I'm producing or that we're producing as a company is as useful to our readers and our audience as REI's is to me. So as you're thinking about your own content marketing and you're thinking about your audience, I think it's really helpful to have a touchstone like REI to measure your own content against. Oftentimes, I think we think of our audience in terms of demographics. We think job title, age, industry, budget, income, marital status, and all of the common kind of demographic criteria. But I think understanding who your audience is really goes much deeper than that. I think Ardith Albee said it best when she posed the question, do we see our buyers the way they see themselves? And that's the appropriate mindset to have when we're trying to answer those questions that go beyond standard demographics. And here are some examples of what that looks like. So think about, how do they fit into their organization? How do they describe themselves and their role on LinkedIn? What questions do they need answered? What's their decision-making process look like? Who else is involved in that decision-making process? What content do they need? What made them start looking for a solution in the first place? And the million-dollar question, how are we going to connect with them? What content do they read regularly, and why do they read it? What search terms do they use? When you begin to think of your audience like this, you'll begin to understand how you can truly add value to their lives, and I think that's a really powerful thing. It's not about selling. I think it's about providing information and solutions to make our audience's lives better. Sales are a byproduct of creating value first. So your audience research doesn't have to be that complicated. To get started, talk to your current customers. Talk to the people who already love you. Find out why they love you. Take some of the questions on the previous slide. Schedule a 15-minute phone call with any client that's willing to give you some time. One thing that I think is interesting is to reach out to some of the people that didn't buy from you. Figure out which questions you didn't answer well enough for them. One thing that we recommend is sit down with your sales team. At least once a quarter, your sales team, they're talking to more customers and potential customers than anyone, and they're a source of great information about your audience. Once you've done that, you can obviously turn to places like social media and industry research to really round out who your buyers are, who that sweet spot for you is, and what do they need. All of your audience research is going to act as a foundation to your strategy, and that's what's next. So to be strong in our strategy component, we need two things. We need to have a written strategy. Currently, only about 40% of B2C marketers and 37% of B2B marketers have a documented content strategy. And we need our strategy to be shared and followed by all. So for some reason, strategy is one of the stickier concepts when it comes to content marketing. A lot of our clients see it as some sort of arcane and complicated process, best left to the experts. And frankly, I'm kind of okay with that because then they hire us to do it. Now, admittedly, it can be complicated, but the fundamental purpose of a content marketing strategy is simple. It's about drawing a clear path from your business and marketing goals to the content that you create. It's really as simple as that. So your content marketing strategy should focus on your core business and marketing goals and how content can really help you achieve them. We recently revised our own strategy at BrandPoint, and we started with a content marketing strategy statement. This was kind of the foundational layer for us. Now, full disclosure, we completely took this exercise from Christina Halverson, who literally wrote the book on content strategy. If you haven't read her book, Content Strategy for the Web, highly recommend it. So your strategy statement should include the following elements: your business goals, how you're going to deliver on those goals, your audience, and your audience needs, as we discussed earlier. When we did this exercise and created our strategy statement, this is what we developed. Now, there's a lot to unpack here, but it's a critical lens through which we look at the rest of our strategy. It's really that foundational layer. It's also a good point to secure agreement with all of your stakeholders. If you and your stakeholders can agree on these elements, then building your strategy and ultimately your content plan becomes a lot more straightforward. Once you have this statement down, you can then start to layer in other important elements. So next, we start thinking about content themes, topics, and types that support that statement. So identify what are the core themes for your business. What are the core questions you can answer for your audience? And then what topics bring those two things together? Once you have that nailed down, you can start thinking about which content types are best suited for each topic. And I'll show you an example of what that looks like. So let's say that you manufacture a line of clothing in Minnesota, where BrandPoint is from. One theme of your business might be made in Minnesota. So the common questions that your audience might ask would include, what are some made in Minnesota holiday gift ideas? Who is making the clothing? How do you support the local economy? And so on. So from there, you can develop interesting topics that relate directly to those questions. You could do a video series featuring the people who are making the clothing, or a blog series featuring different Minnesota artists who help you design your clothing. You could do a blog post about great Minnesota-made gift ideas for different budget levels. You could do an infographic mapping out how the revenue of your company is put back into Minnesota's economy. And those are just some ideas, but to give you a sense of what that looks like in action. So once you've gone through that process and identified your content opportunities, next you're going to want to map out your plan for when you're going to do this on an editorial calendar. Now, you can do this in Excel, and a lot of people do, or you could do it in Google Sheets, and that's fine. This is really where a content marketing platform really comes in handy. Regardless of what you use, you're going to want to capture who are you writing for, what's your goal, whether it's thought leadership, traffic, lead generation, social engagement, etc. What's the topic and headline? Who's going to create the content? That's pretty important. Who needs to be involved with the creation, design, edit, and review process? And what are all those steps? And finally, what's the target publish date? So having all of those things represented on your editorial calendar are really going to help you remove all of the guesswork around your content creation process. It's also going to help you with your publishing schedule and in developing a regular cadence of producing content. So next, let's talk about our data component. To have a strong data component, we need two things. We need a set of KPIs that tells you if your practice is on track or off track, and We need a process to update and review those KPIs every single week. So the KPIs that you're reviewing every week become your scorecard for your content marketing practice. Gino Wickman, the creator of the Entrepreneurial Operating System, he believes that scorecards act like instrumentation on a plane. They do a couple of really important things for you. They both help guide you to your destination, and maybe more importantly, they help to really quickly alert you to issues that need your attention. Where are you off track? We recommend to establish your KPIs quarterly and then track them every week and make sure you're on track. What about ROI? Have any of you been asked by maybe your leadership team, this all sounds great, but what's the value? What's the ROI? How do you measure any of this? How do you measure the impact? It's interesting, I was recently talking to the head of content marketing for General Mills about measurement, and her view was to measure the impact of content marketing really the way you would any other marketing program. Now, I have to say, I totally agree with that approach. That is the ideal. The challenge is not every organization has the access to the same sophisticated measurement tools that General Mills has. They have an army of analysts that can answer any question you want through data. So if you don't have access to that, here's a few simple things that you can do to measure the impact of your efforts. So one measurement that we like to look at is the value of your organic traffic. So look at the value that your organic traffic from the content that you're producing generates by looking at what that same traffic would have cost you if you had to purchase it through Google AdWords. Now, unlike Google AdWords, your content has a lifespan. It has a useful life. It doesn't stop providing value to you, like AdWords does when you stop, buying keywords. Your content has a long, useful life. So we recommend looking at this data over several months and then extrapolating that average over really what you see as the lifespan of your content, and then compare that expense with the cost of producing that content. For our average customer, this generates, that one measurement in and of itself generates a very positive ROI for them. The next thing you can look at is lead quality. By really looking at the quantity and the quality of your leads. And it makes sense because as your prospects become more interested in what you have to say through your content, they're probably going to become more interested in what you have to offer and will jump into your sales funnel. As your program gains traction, look at the number of leads your content is generating and how those leads convert to customers over time. So those are just a couple of ways that content marketing can make a difference and how you can actually tie it to either cost savings or revenue. But content marketing can make an impact in so many areas of your business. Now, one thing to keep in mind when you're measuring ROI, I think it's a lot like working out. You're not going to see a payoff in a week or a month, but if you commit to doing it regularly over time, you're generally going to see really amazing results. And unlike other forms of marketing, content marketing pays dividends far into the future that don't stop when you turn off an ad spend. So finally, we get to the content itself. to have a strong content component, we need two things. We need an understanding of what high quality content looks like for your category, and we need the ability to produce it on a consistent basis. So I still see a lot of people who think quantity is king when it comes to content. But consider this. Back in 2012, there were about 500,000 blogs published every single day. Today we are publishing 3.5 million blogs every single day. And it's showing no signs of the trend line diminishing. I imagine 5 years from now it's going to be significantly more than that. The point of this is there is so much content out there. Today, I think at one point quantity was a game you could play with content marketing, but today you just can't. It's impossible to win on quantity alone. You have to have something really valuable to say. So if you can write one really good piece of content per week, it's going to have far more impact than writing 4 crappy ones. As evidence of that, according to a recent report that I read from TrackMaven, brands published 35% more content last year, but they got 17% less engagement. So the signal to noise ratio is only increasing. If you're not going to create truly great and valuable content, you're kind of wasting your time today. So that begs the question, how do we create quality content? How do you create content that really matters and is going to create a desirable result for you? So at BrandPoint, we tend to think about content in a couple of ways. One is, how do search engines determine quality, and how does your audience determine quality? Now, trying to balance these two things can be a bit of a head scratcher. We have a 10-part comprehensive blog series on brandpoint.com that details all of the different ways that Google assesses quality. In the follow-up, we'll be sure to include some links to that so you can check that out. For now, because we don't have time to get into all of those aspects, for now, just think of it this way. People look at your content, and Google looks at how those people interact with your content. So Google has about 200 ranking factors that we know of, that they tell us about anyway, and I'm sure they have many more than that they don't tell us about. If you tried to optimize every piece of content to all 200 ranking factors, you'd never get anything out the door. So here's 4 key elements to think about as you're creating content that will help you satisfy both your audience and Google. So first is the main topic or headline. Identify a theme that is valuable to your audience. Next is keywords. Now, your readers and Google, for that matter, they're not looking to see how many times you can stuff a piece of content with a keyword. They really want to see how well you use the keyword to talk comprehensively around the topic. 3 is a unique perspective. How can your expertise add something different to this conversation that hasn't been said 1,000 different times already on the internet? You know, uniqueness matters. And number 4 is trustworthy links. By using and citing authoritative sources in your content, it tells both your audience and Google that you know your stuff and you're citing authoritative content. If you go through this exercise with each piece of content you create, you're well on your way to ending up with something that both Google and your audience are going to value. So I know this may seem a little daunting. There are countless content types and tactics and channels to consider. But to be successful, you don't have to be everywhere. I think it comes back to your audience. If you know your audience doesn't read blogs, maybe don't write blogs. If you know your audience isn't on social media, which I don't know who that audience would be, but if you know they're not, then don't focus on creating social media content. Figure out where that audience is and create great content for that channel and for them. And I think that's really just the important thing to remember is, where are they and what do they need around your content. So there we have it. I know we covered a lot of ground in our time together. By breaking your content marketing practice into 6 core components and then looking at the basic elements of each of these components, I hope I've given you at least a few ideas on how you can simplify your content marketing program and make it more effective. I want to thank everybody again for investing the time to learn a little bit more about BrandPoint and for attending this webinar.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Scott. So that wraps up the presentation portion, but I do want to open it up for some questions if everyone wants to stick around. Thank you so much for those who submitted questions ahead of time, and we got a couple good ones during the presentation as well. So let's start with the one theme was like kind of smaller teams or maybe less resources. So Scott, how do you? One question was, how do you kind of plan for all this if you've got a small team?
Well, my obvious recommendation would be to hire BrandPoint, and we can help you through all of that. But kidding aside, not kidding, but kind of. If you have a small team, I think it comes back to, if we go to the accountabilities that we talked about, you might have a team of 2 or 3 people. It's really thinking about what does that accountability chart look like for your organization, and can you cover with your small team all of those core functions? On small teams, as we know, people have to wear a lot of hats, and so thinking about how we can double up and where people can own things, and then potentially where does it make sense to outsource to add to the horsepower of that team as you're seeing success. So that would be my recommendation, is to really think about accountabilities first, and then what does that structure look like? How can we cover those accountabilities within the team that we have?
Cool. What about like developing a content marketing strategy with a small budget? That was another question. Is content marketing strategy kind of like a big budget thing, or can you kind of do it? Are there more cost-efficient ways to do it?
Yeah, there's a lot of different levels that you can go for in your content marketing strategy. So like when we have a client that hires us to do a strategy, we are obviously doing a much deeper dive than we talked about in the presentation, and we're looking at a variety of factors for our clients to be able to do good work for them. If you have a really small budget and you're just getting started with content marketing, I recommend what we kind of laid out in this guideline. Start with audience, start with building a content marketing statement, start by looking at themes, topics, and content types. And that is something that your internal team should be able to get started with, really for no cost, just time. And start from there, grow your practice, and then if it makes sense, you can always go deeper. But we always recommend to start small and simple if you've got a smaller team and less resources. Awesome.
One one question, kind of one last question on sort of limited resource that came in during the presentation actually. If I have limited resources, do I have to choose between channels, and how do I choose? I think maybe kind of a question about like repurposing content across several channels.
Yeah, I think it's better to pick one channel and go deeper and do a really good job than it is to dabble in a bunch of other channels. Pick a channel that you can win at, build that up, get that working really well before you jump into another one. I always recommend clients start with their own website. Their own owned media presence needs to be strong, and your website needs to answer the core questions that your audience has, and you need to publish on a regular cadence to your website. So that would be where I would start. Build a strong practice there, and then you can look at moving into other channels once you've built that foundation. The other thing about starting with your website first is having that owned media content really can act as the fuel for your social channel and some of your other channels. So it's a really great place to start.
Awesome, that's great. So one last question is kind of around sales and marketing alignment. So how do the traditional like one-to-one sales process, like phone calls or sales demos, intersect with content marketing strategy? Where are those things kind of related?
Yeah, great question. I think over the last 10 years that has changed dramatically. Where sales and marketing used to be much more siloed, didn't really talk to each other a whole lot. They had their separate functions that they played. I am seeing so much more integration between them today. I think the recent stat is 70% of the buyer's journey happens before they ever talk to a salesperson today. So we have access to so much more resources online. Marketing is more important today than it ever was in supporting the sales process on the front end, on the top of the funnel. And then once somebody becomes a lead and is engaged with the salesperson, the content marketing continues to play a role in nurturing that prospect along. If you're in a business that has a longer sales cycle, it really does become a back and forth between the relationship with a rep and then the content that is nurturing that relationship downstream. So we're seeing them become incredibly integrated, and the more they can converse and share information, the better.
Awesome. Well, I think we're almost done with time, so we'll cut the questions there. Before we wrap up, I do want to offer to everyone attending the webinar here that we're offering a free first month of our content marketing platform, BrandPoint Hub. Just use the code Playbook at the website there on your screen, and we'll get you all set up. So yeah, that's cool. Thank you so much, Scott, and thank you everyone for attending and for hanging out with us this afternoon, and have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, everyone.